Welcome to our class on Chassidus. We're going to be learning a beautiful Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe. The name of the Chassidic discourse is called השמים כסאי. The Rebbe said this Chassidic discourse on Shabbos Parshas Kdoshem. It was the second day of Rosh Chodesh Eir in the year tafshin lamed vav, 48 years ago. The Rebbe went on to certify and edit this Chassidic discourse in honor of the second day in the month of Eir in the year tafshin memtes, 35 years ago. So again, the Chassidic discourse is based on the verse in the prophets, where the prophet says, "Hashemayim kisi," Hashem says, "The heaven is my throne. The haaretz hadaim ragli," and the earth is my place where my footstool is. Eize bayis asher tivnuli. What house can you build for me? But the prophet says, "Ve'alzeh Abiט el ani v'nechei ruach." This is what I look for. I look for the poor person and the broken person. So Rebbe says it's known, the question that's brought down, the fact that we know Hashem doesn't have an image of a body. So what are you going to say? Hashem, the heaven is his chair and the earth is his footstool. What does Hashem have to do with a body? Also, we have to understand, what does the verse say? Eize bayis asher tibnuli. What house can you build for me? And what do I look for? I look for someone that's poor and broken spirit. So the question is, what is this powerful quality of someone that's poor and a broken spirit? And those, even though that what house can you build for me? But no, you know what I'm going to look for? Someone that's poor and a broken spirit. What's that all about? And remember, the point of the explanation is that when we say heaven and we say earth, we're referring to Torah and mitzvot. And like Chabad has explained at length in the Chassidic discourse of Torah Eiyer, that generally heaven is connected to Torah. We receive the Torah from heaven. Mitzvahs are given us down in this world, and that is our spiritual work with our neshama, but specifically with the lower three levels of our nefesh, ruach, and neshama of our soul. What is bias spiritually? That's the work of b'chol ma'itcha, with all the whole might, which is without any limits. And that comes from the level of the soul of chaya and yechida. And so therefore, what does it mean? Eize bias, what house shall you build for me? What does that mean? That even the work of bias, which means without limits, which is referring to our spiritual work of our chaya and yechida of our soul, a very, very high level, and through that you actually bring down makah, very, very high level stuff in this world. And what house could you build for me? Because even the most powerful, lofty spiritual service of makif, of chaya and yechida, it's only a ray. So again, there's no question about it that yes, Torah mitzvahs, nefesh ruach neshama, and bayis makipim, which is chai yechid, that's very, very powerful, but they're only a ray. But what does Hashem look at? What is Abiט el ani v'nechei ruach? Someone that's poor and broken. What does that mean practically? That is referring to the level of bittul, acceptance. Ani, someone that's poor, someone that's a broken spirit, has real bittul. And then when you have bittul, then you draw down the essence of Hashem. El ze Abiט. You want to connect to the essence of Hashem. That comes through bittul and acceptance. And everything you can say that this is the connection between the Haftorah of השמים כסאי, which normally השמים כסאי is read on Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, Shabbat Rosh Chodesh. Why? Because what happens on Rosh Chodesh? Rosh Chodesh, that's when the moon gets born again. And what happens when the moon is born? It's only a small dot. And what does a dot resemble? Like the bittul acceptance. In other words, there's nothing to it. It's only a small dot. And not only that, a drop before the moon is actually born, it's totally in a level of bittul. In other words, it's not even a dot. And specifically from when it's not even a dot, that's how you have the birth of something new. In other words, when you have total bittul, total acceptance, total nullification, then you receive a new light. It's called a Ur Chadash, a new light from the sun. In other words, and to draw down this light, it's from the sun itself, because we know there's nothing new under the sun, but actually it comes from higher than the sun. And that's why in Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh is the idea of bittul acceptance. They read the Haftorah of השמים כסאי, and where it says, what does Hashem look for? Al ani v'nechei ruach, we learned before, which is the level of bittul acceptance. That because what happens when the person is in the level of bittul and acceptance, you draw in a very, very high new light. Just like on Rosh Chodesh, when through the bittul, when there's no moon, that creates a new light, Ur Chadash, higher than the sun. The same thing also through the bittul, we draw in very, very powerful energy. Rebbe says he'd like to say, you'd like to add, and to explain the verse that says, Vel ze Abiט. What do I look at? El Ani, someone that's poor. In other words, what is he referring to? Not only the idea. Till now we learned Ani means someone that's poor, bittul, acceptance. But Rebbe says, no, even someone that's literally poor, spiritually. What does it mean, spiritually poor? Poor, bedas, in the level of intellect. What does that mean? The person is poor. They don't have das. They don't have an understanding in godliness. So if that's the case, they don't have an understanding of godliness. How do they connect to God? They serve God through emunah, through faith, which is lower than logic and understanding. A person thinks and comprehends, etc. So from this perspective, emunah is lower. But nevertheless, since this idea of being poor, in other words, the level of emunah, faith, which is lower than logic, we also have the upgrade of it, which basically means the level of bittul, acceptance. So that's why Hashem says, yeah, I look to that. So in other words, there's the idea of being bittul, a person works himself to be bittul. Here we're saying even deeper, even when you don't have anything, but you have emunah, you have faith, Hashem looks at that emunah, which is even lower than logic. And just like we find by the moon, but even though when you have the birth of the moon, it's only a little dot, and how much more so before the little dot, it's totally concealed and it doesn't shine. But nevertheless, because why is it not there? Because it's coming from a place of bittul, it's nullification. You're able to draw in a powerful new light, which is even higher than the light of the sun. And Rebbe said he'd like to connect this with the explanation of the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Chabad Rebbe. And we're celebrating his birthday on the second day of the month of Iyer. So based on the verse that says, Uveroshei Chodshechem, in the heads of the months. So the question he asks is, why does it say Beroshei Chodshechem? Roshei means plural, of multiple heads. Why are you saying multiple heads? And he explains, because month, the month on spiritually is referring to which sphere? It's referring to the sphere of Malchus. And so Rashi is referring to the idea of the faith, and in faith there's two dots, the 2 points. That's why he says Rashi, there's 2 levels of faith. In other words, what does that mean? There's 2 levels of faith, because he says when you have in the Hebrew alphabet, you have the alphabet and you have the vowels. One of the vowels is called a segel, which basically is 2 dots and 1 dot in the bottom. That's a segel. So what happens in the segel, you have the 2 on top, which are lined up, then you have the middle one. So where's the middle one? It's not under the right or the left, it's actually centered between the 2. So that's a segel. Then there's something which is called a segulta, which is just the opposite. So you have the 2 dots which are on the bottom, and you have the dot which is on top. So in other words, you have a segel again, you have the dot in the bottom, 2 on top. Segulta is just the opposite, you have the 2 and the 1 is on top. So you have 2 types of dots. One is either on below, regular segel, and one is on top, a segulta. The same thing also when it comes to faith, there's 2 dots. In other words, in the revealed state, you have the dot on the bottom, and then there's also a high dot, because we know there's a concept in Kabbalah that no, it's Chilas Masayf, when the beginning is wedged in the end, and the end is wedged in the beginning. In other words. So what did Rabbi just introduce? That you have the idea of emunah, faith, but you have 2 different levels of faith. You have the faith on the bottom and the faith on the top, and he's going to explain. So he says like this: the spiritual work of being poor and broken in spirit, like we explained before, is referring to the level of emunah. You don't comprehend, but you have faith. In other words, so that has to be even before the spiritual work of a shamayim, kisi v'hartzadayim ragli. And what we just learned, shamayim is referring to Torah, and Iyer is referring to mitzvahs. So even before you learn Torah, even before you do the mitzvahs, you have to have a faith. And how much more so before the spiritual work of what Ezav Bayis tribunally, which we learned before, is referring to without any limits. So even before that, you have to have faith. Why is that? Because the fact is that faith, acceptance, is the foundation for everything. So before you start learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, going off the charts, you have to come with the perspective of emunah, faith, bittul, acceptance. Now, however, in the beginning, so you're coming from a level of faith, acceptance, which is described in the verse as poor. That's literally, you need to have faith in Hashem. It knows, even though you have to comprehend certain things, but the fact is, because faith is coming from a place of you're poor in knowledge. After you introduce the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu with faith, then you start working with your internal powers, which is a Shemayim Kisi V'Aretz Doim Ragli, which means learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. And then with the external powers, the Koichas Makifim, which is the house, and you have the poorness beforehand is like it says. So what, that's the case. If that's the case, what's the idea? What's the idea of the poor beforehand? Why is it poor? Because it says that Pesi Yamin L'Chol Davar. It means a fool believes everything. And who was that referring to? Moshe Rabbeinu. And it was even though Moshe Rabbeinu understood. He's the one that went to Hashem and got us the Torah, but nevertheless, everything that he had in a level of faith. Why? Because if he understood, where does faith come in? So the second level of faith comes from the perspective of that even after you understand everything, even after you learn and you do mitzvahs, but then you think for 1 second, Hashem is infinite, we're finite. And I'll say that in Kabbalistic terms, less machshava tfisa b'lei klal. We can't comprehend God. So because we can't comprehend God, so we're all like nothing in front of Hashem, and therefore that creates a higher level of faith. So in other words, in generally, you have the being poor, which is in the beginning of the service of Hashem, which is the acceptance lower than understanding, and then you have being poor afterwards, which is actually a much deeper level of acceptance, which is called bittul matzias of understanding. In other words, before we go further, what's the Rebbe saying? He's saying it's like this. It's almost like a sandwich. You start off serving Hashem, faith. I know nothing. I'm ready to accept everything. That's the introduction. Then you learn. Then you do the mitzvahs, then you comprehend, you're doing the mitzvahs to actions, and then you even go above board without limits. But then you come to the realization, after all said and done, my big wisdom and understanding and my Torah mitzvahs, and again, it's amazing, but guess what? Compared to Hashem, it's nothing. And that brings you to the higher level of acceptance, which is called bittul b'metzias. And Rabbi said, you can say, that's why the verse says, what do I look at? El oni, someone that's poor, and a kei ruach, someone that's broken. And where does it say it? It says after Hashemayim Kisi. In other words, even though the faith that is in the beginning of the service, it reaches, so to speak, Hashem, and like we know that the expression is that someone that's simple always says Baruch Hashem, etc., because obviously they're connecting to Hashem. But the fact is that what does Hashem really look at? What's the ultimate relation? And what is it like the greatest connection? And the revelation of the essence of Hashem, that actually comes from the faith after the knowledge. So in other words, what the Rebbe is saying is like this: the faith before, which is huge, that's the introduction. But after you learned, after you did the mitzvahs, after you're so connected, you're able to stop and say, you know what? Me compared to Hashem is nothing, and I'm totally accepting. Much harder. But that gets you to the essence of Hashem. And Rabbi said you can say that these three ideas, which basically means the poor of faith before we start doing our work, and then the work of learning a Shemayim Kishu, which is learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, and then being poor afterwards, the ultimate acceptance, is just like the three divisions in the fruit of the tree, like in our parsha. In other words, in our parasha, it speaks about the 3 years of Orla, where you can't touch, or you plant a new tree, you can't touch it. And then the 4th year, you have to bring it to Israel. And the 5th year, you can do whatever you want. Those are the 3 stages. And they're also going to tie that concept into the same idea. And it sounds like this. When you have a tree, and you plant a tree, so you plant it in the earth. Earth, and the sphere says, which sphere? The sphere of Malchus. What is the tree? The tree is referring to Zah, Zer Ampim, which is the 6 midos. So when you plant a tree in the earth, spiritually you're taking Zah, the six midos, and you're putting it into Malchus. Like the verse says, Kisavoy Lord, you come to land, Unataptem Kolates Machal, you're taking Zah and putting it into Malchus. Now when you draw in Zah into Malchus, that's the spiritual concept of planting a tree. There's 3 levels. In the first 3 years, so what happens is Malchus, which was the earth that received the tree. So where did it receive it from? Only from the last 3 spheres of Zah. So even though you're planting a tree which is Zah, the 6 midos, but it's only the last 3 spheres, which is called Netzach, Hoid, Yesoid. So the first 3 years, Netzach, Hoid, Yesoid is connecting to Malchus. Now, but since the main idea of these 3 midos, of Netzach, Hoid, Yesoid, what are they? They're all about functional. They're all about action. So therefore, the emotions of Netzach Yesod is similar to Malchus. Why? Because what's Malchus? That's the source of the what's created afterwards, and it makes room for someone to exist. And because it's all about making room for an existence, you can have, in Hebrew it's called unique hasachitzayim. Unfortunately, it can draw out to wrong places. And that's the connection of the explanation that says the first 3 years is connected to the three spheroids of Netzach Yesod, with the explanation that says the first 3 years of the tree is connected to the three impure klipot. Why? Because when Malchus, the earth, receives only from where Netzach Yesod, which are functional spheroids, unfortunately it's going to leach out to the three impure klipot. And therefore, the fruit of those 3 years is Arla, and it's forbidden to have any benefit from it. So that's the first 3 years. And those Nehi, Netzach Yesod, is going to Malchus, and because it's only functional, it could leach out, and that's where you can't use it. What happens in the 4th year? So now Malchus receives from a higher level. It receives from Tiferes, which is the bottom half of Tiferes, or the two bottom halves of Tiferes, but not the top part. And because it receives from the bottom part of Tiferes, that's why the fruit of the 4th year is called Kodesh Hilulim Hashem. It's holy, praising to Hashem, because praising it goes in the concept of Tiferes. And like it says, Mahalim, you praise L'Shem Tifartecha. So that's the 4th year. So the 4th year, again, is connected to the lower level, either the bottom third or the bottom 2/3 of Tiferes, and that's why it's holy for Hashem. What happens in the 5th year? So Malchus, the earth, receives from the highest level of Tiferes, and that's why it says in reference to the 5th year, L'choisef lachem tuasei, to add into the tuah. In other words, at the 4 levels of Tiferes of the 4th year, Netzach Yesod of the first 3 years, are connected to the 4 names of Yud Kei Vav Kei, but in the 5th year, you bring in from the top of the Yud, which is connected to the idea of Kesser. Now, so that's on a spiritual level. But now the Rebbe is going to explain this idea of the 3 years, the 4th year and the 5th year, the way on a practical level, the way we can use to serve Hashem. And the Rebbe says, you can say like this: what is Malchus? Earth is Malchus, is referring to when a person learns Torah and does the mitzvahs in actuality, in your thought, in your speech, and in your action. Now, when you fulfill the Torah mitzvahs, you're learning Torah, you do mitzvahs in action. How does that happen? Because by you drawing into your thought and your speech and your action. Now that can happen, the Rebbe says, in 3 different ways. In other words, it can happen in the first level, corresponding to the 3 years, where you're drawing into Malchus, which means learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, thought, speech, and action, but you're drawing in from where? Which emotions? Netzach Yesod. And we said these 3 midos, the last 3 midos before Malchus, is all about action. You're like a robot, you're a machine, you're doing it. Now, even though Netzach Yesod is connected to the idea of our feet, which take us to where we have to go, which means, and going in the way of Hashem, but nevertheless, because it's only Netzach Yesod, it's great, it's amazing, keep on doing it. But because it's only functional, what are you lacking? The higher midos, the higher emotions, so you have no passion, and you have no compassion learning Torah and mitzvahs. Because where does compassion come from? Where does energy come from? It comes from love and awe of Hashem. So what happens is, if you're only serving Hashem from Netzach Yesod as a functional human being, so what can happen is, and you're lacking the fire of love for our Hashem, you're going to lose. You're going to at some point you're going to conk out. You're going to become weak in serving Hashem, and especially in areas where you have to go above and beyond, where you have to sanctify yourself, even in things that are permissible, and you're not going to go that extra mile. And up to the point, you're going to start at first, you're not going to do things that like extra things. But then you're going to come to the point, unfortunately or tragically, that you're going to do things which are forbidden. And even things that are forbidden, that you can't even have any benefit from it. And therefore, what happens? You're just practicing a skafia. And again, it's a very high level as long as you're doing and with thought, speech, and action. The problem is that it's only Netzach Yesod. Unfortunately, it's going to dry up. So you just push yourself. In Kabbalistic terms, it's called a skafia. You practice restraint. You really want to, you're torn, and you practice restraint and you do what you're supposed to. I know that you can say that this is like the level of the faith before intellect and understanding. Why? Because it's like being poor before you understand. And even though, and in this level of faith, you reach the essence of Hashem, but it's not the revealed part, like we learned before. And like it's explained in the Chabad in reference to the 3 years of Arla, literally, that a person, so to speak, the first 3 years, you literally have to break your desire, and you wait literally patiently or impatiently for 3 years, and you fulfill the biblical negative precept that for the first 3 years you shouldn't touch it. Like, for example, we accept whatever Hashem wants, and we literally connect to Hashem. We're doing whatever Hashem wants, but the problem is you're not doing it in a way where I'm so happy to do what Hashem wants. Because happy, that's revelation. And like he explains in the Torah, that praising Hashem comes from, like the lights are on. But you're doing it just in the level of what? Of acceptance. Okay, so the first 3 years, just to recap, is malchus, which means you're doing everything. You're learning, you're praying, you're studying, you're doing mitzvot, but you're just a human, you're just a function. And again, it's great, it's amazing, it's better than nothing. Obviously, it's huge, it's skafia, but you're lacking the fire. And when you're lacking the fire, unfortunately, you're not reaching the ultimate Hashem, and it's hard, and you're practicing the skafia, you're practicing your strength. But what happens after you come to the 4th year? That what happens in the 4th year, in Malchus, again, the learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, you're also bringing in from Tiferet. What does that mean practically? That in your thoughts, and in your speech, and in your action, you're actually bringing in the emotion. Which emotions? Love and awe for Hashem. And joy, and beauty, and then when you have the love and awe for Hashem, and then you're able to, so to speak, be kodesh hilulim Hashem, you're able to connect to Hashem. And then what happens when you have passion, when you love Hashem, you're in awe of Hashem, you're happy about it, you don't have to push away a scoff, you push away the bad, because what happens is when a person loves Hashem, something which is bad, something which is evil, it's disgusting actually, and you don't have to push it away. You just want to be busy with the light. When a person is on fire, when you have the love for Hashem, the joy for Hashem, you don't have to deal with negativity. It's not in your world. It's not in your radar. And that's why when it comes to the 4th year, what does it say? All the fruit are holy. And it says, Kodesh hilulim LaHashem. What does Hilul mean? Like the author explains in the Torah based on the verse, V'ata Kadosh, a beautiful insight. V'ata Kadosh, you, holy Hashem, Yoshev. What causes you to sit down? To Hilul Yisrael. When the Jewish people praise you. And why is Hashem sitting and getting involved in the world, even though He's totally disconnected? When we are happy and we praise Hashem from joy and love, that's what causes Hashem to be drawn down to this world. And that's similar, like the spiritual work of Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, which is again, Shamayim, Kisar, which is referring to learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, and also from Makif, Chai Yechidah, which is the house, which is basically going the extra mile, and through that you bring down into the internal powers, and into the Makif, you bring it down all into this world. But then what happens is, even though it's huge, the 4th year, again, you're learning Torah, you're doing mitzvahs, it's thought, speech, and action, and you love Hashem, and you're in awe of Hashem, and you have happiness, and you're connecting to Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai Yechidah, but the fact is, it's only coming from a revealed place. And like the author explains in Torah, based on the verse where it says, Moedim anachnu lach, we're accepting to you, Hashem. Umahalin, we praise l'shein tvartecha, that the moedim, the acknowledgement is l'chat Hashem, which means the essence of Hashem, but the praising is the name Hashem to the name of a beauty, which is again a revelation part. But it's not over. Then you come to the 5th year. In the 5th year is to add tuah, which means to add light. And what does that mean? You're drawing in, like we said before, from the dot on top of the yud. Because we said before, the 4 years connected to yud k vav k, and the 5th year is connected to the dot on top. So what does that mean practically? What does that mean in our service of Hashem? That's referring to the faith that comes after the knowledge. In other words, when the faith comes from the recognition, and I'll say it in Aramaic, that less machshava tvisa beklal. As much as you learn, and as much as you study, and as much as you're happy with Hashem and everything, you realize, guess what? We can't really comprehend Hashem, and that's when you connect to the essence of Hashem. In other words, in this level of faith, which comes after learning, after doing the mitzvahs, after the meditation, you have both qualities. One is you're reaching the essence of Hashem, and B, the essence gets revealed. In other words, this level of faith, we realize how great Hashem is. We can't comprehend Him. And all the prayers is only just like to name Hashem. And the fact is, when you reach the essence of Hashem, there's no praying. It's just the level of what? Faith and acknowledgement. That's the highest level. And you can say that the fruit of the 4th year, you only eat in Jerusalem. It's holy fruit. You can only eat in Jerusalem. And we said that's not the highest level. But when you come to the highest level, the fruit of the 5th year, you can eat it all over. It seems it should be just the opposite. And Eric says, no, because the revelation of the 4th year, as great as it is, you're happy and you're connected to Hashem, it's still finite. And therefore, the praising of these fruit, you have to bring it to Jerusalem to praise Hashem and to thank Hashem. But however, when it comes to the revelation of the 5th year, that's already without limits. Acceptance is without limits. And therefore, when you're accepting Hashem, it's actually, you're adding into the wheat. And that's all over. And even things that don't have holiness. And not only, you can even eat it in impurity. But when a person basically is accepting in Hashem, on the level where there's no holiness, then what happens is you're actually drawing in from the essence of the infinite light, which is higher than having any connection with the spheroids. So you're connecting to the highest level, but then you're bringing it down to the lowest level. And by connecting to the highest level and bringing it down to the lowest level, you're actually fulfilling and completing the tremendous dream, desire that Hashem had to have a Dira Yisbarich, a dwelling of Hashem down in the materialistic world, and to the lowest place where Hashem is not recognized. We literally make a dwelling place for the essence of the infinite part of Hashem. I never say, like to add that when a person does this spiritual work of the 4th year, because the fact is, on its own, it's a finite process. But it comes after the spiritual work of the 3 years before. So what happens then is you create a jumping even in the 4th year. And because the fact that the first 3 years, it's all about iskafia, so you're jumping, and you create that energy in the 4th year as well. And that's one of the reasons why that the spiritual work of the 4th year, from there we come to the tremendous level. You can't just go to the 5th. You have to have the first 3 years of restraint, and then enjoyment, and then to the ultimate acceptance, and then we come to the highest level of the 5th year. So the purpose thing is, it's not like you can go straight to the 5th. You go for 3 years. Iskafia, acceptance, then you have the year of where it's praising Hashem, etc., and then you go to the ultimate acceptance. You connect to the essence of Hashem and bring it down into this world. The Rebbe says he liked to connect this with the teaching of the birthday boy of the Rebbe Marash, which is Tiferes Shabbat Tiferes, the beauty of beauty. And he says that what you have to be lechatchila Rebbe, to begin with, you have to go off the charts. Rebbe says it should be the will of Hashem by doing our actions and our work. And especially, lechatchila, a Rebbe going straight to the top, total acceptance, the essence of Hashem, bringing down Hashem here. We're going to have the voice of Hashem is jumping on the mountains and coming to take us out of Gullus. And like the Medrash says in the verse, Kol doidi hines abom dalgar mekavitz al gvaris, and the Medrash explains it's referring to the King Messiah, that he's going to come and redeem us, and he's going to take us standing upright to Eretz Yisrael, and Rabbi finishes off, it should happen b'karev mamish very, very soon and very, very quickly. So here you have a beautiful, beautiful Chassidic discourse. Rabbi explains 2 levels of faith. And again, it's a process. You start with the first level of faith, then Torah mitzvahs, and then the joy and happiness, but then the ultimate level of faith that the fact is, how can we compare to the infinite of Hashem? And by going to that level, like Rabbi says, l'chatchila Rebbe will all merit to Hashem coming and jumping and taking us out of Gullus. And God willing, our next class will be in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. Have a great and blessed week. Shavua Tov.